Hi there. In today's video, I'm continuing my ChatGPT Clone in C project. So in the previous video, I created this. If I compile and run this program, we have this very simple ChatGPT-like graphical interface created with Raylib. Now, we can't do much yet in this program. We can just say hello and it will appear here. But we are not connecting to ChatGPT yet. So we can just send messages into this chat UI, which is not much. But in today's video, I'm going to integrate the ChatGPT API into this so that we can actually send a message to ChatGPT and then get a response back. So let's do it. Now, how do we connect to the ChatGPT API using C? Well, we can use curl. So let's in fact first create just a curl test.c just to see how it works. So let's again just include stdio.h and let's do in main and let's return 0 and let's printf this is curl. And if we then gcc curl test.c and we run curl test, we get this is curl, so everything is working. So then we can include curl/curl.h, and after that we can define a curl star curl, and we can set this equal to curl easy init. I believe it works this way. Yes, so this will return a curl object. We also have to do curl easy cleanup, and we pass in the curl. Then what we have to do is we have to say, well, first of all, if curl equals null, then we got an error, so let's do printf unable to initialize curl. And let's say error, and what else? We have to pass in, because it's printf, so we are going to print it into std_err. And I believe that curl gives us some kind of error information, so we can add it here. And we can say curl error something, get error, curl get error pointer, something like this. Curl error, curl easy str error. This is the function. Or actually, this is not, we don't get any error information at this point. This is just if we are unable to initialize it. So we are only going to say that there was an error and of course return 1. And then we have to do curl code res. They use res usually for result or resource or something. And this is going to be curl easy setup. And we pass in the curl and we pass in curl setup URL. Sorry, curl opt URL. What is it called? Curl opt URL. And we pass a value, which will be the URL of the ChatGPT API. And this is not quite exactly what I want, so I don't quite remember how it works. I think we call this just separately, and then finally we say curl opt, curl easy perform, and we pass in curl. So that is how it works. And then after this, if res is not curl EOK, curl EOK, then we are going to again have an error. So printf std_err and error unable to perform request. And then we get this error text, which is curl error something. Curl easy str error. And we pass in the res, which is the curl code. Great. And again, we will return 1 in that. So then we have to set all of these options. So the URL will be this. So in the API documentation of ChatGPT, we have this URL. So we are going to pass it in here. We also need to pass in some header. So first of all, we have to say curl easy setup curl and curl opt post 1. So we want to send a post request. So we have to set it to 1. and we have to set post fields to some JSON payload. So let's define that here. Char star JSON payload. In fact, it is not char star, it's just char, and let's define JSON max len, and let's add here some payload. So we are going to have the model, which we will use GPT 3.5 Turbo for, and we will have the messages, which will be a list which will contain an object that will have a row, which will be user, and it will have a content, which will be, in this case, just hello. And that should be the payload. And I will set this define JSON max len to be something. Let's do 2048. And how curl works is that we have to also set easy set opt. We have to set an option called curl opt write function, which will be something. Let's call it write callback. Now, I don't think I remember how to do this, but let's see how far I get. So this will be a size t write callback, and this function will be called every time that curl gets some content from the request. So it might be called multiple times. And in here, we are going to have a void star content. We are going to have size t size, and we are going to have size t nmem, which is the number of elements, or I guess members or something. So we will have the content, which will be the text that is returned. But it is returned as void because maybe it can be something other than text. I'm not quite sure why it is a void. And then we get the size, which is the size of one character. And then this is how many characters there are. Something like this. I don't quite understand it. Let me know in the comments if you know better than me. We will also have a void star user p, which we can use as our own user data, which we will use later. Perhaps it is exactly like this. I probably can't see, I can see a definition here. Can I see the write function somewhere? I cannot see what it actually takes, but it was something like this. So I will in fact ask ChatGPT, how do I use curl with C? So there is going to be a write function somewhere, which for some reason ChatGPT did not write for us. So I am going to regenerate this answer, so hopefully we get the actual code. ChatGPT is very slow for some reason today, so let's wait until it answers. Okay, here we have the write callback, and actually I wrote it perfectly correctly. So we have void star contents, we have the size t size t nmem, and void star user p. And then we have to do all this stuff. So let's do that. So first we have to calculate the total size. So the number of characters, this is the number of characters times the size of a character. So this is like in bytes, I guess, the size of the content. And we have to return it from this. And I think internally curl will use this then to fetch the next part or something like that. And here we are using fwrite to write the contents into the user p pointer. But we are actually not going to use fwrite because we don't want to write into a file. We want to get the response in a variable. So what we're going to do for now to test this, we are going to do printf, and we are going to do here s, and we are going to pass in the content. But since it's a void star, we have to cast it into a char star content. Now, when I tried this before, this works, but actually ChatGPT normally shows a different way. So it shows how to do it with sized strings. So because this is a void star and we get the size separately, we have to do something like dot star s, and then we have to pass here maybe the total size. I'm not quite sure why. Well, perhaps it is because the pointer of the content might not end in a null character. So if we just use printf, then it might print something more than is in the content. So that's why we need to do this, so that we only print this much data. But I don't remember how to do this. So let's see if ChatGPT answered this time differently. It did not. So I'm going to ask Google instead, and I'll say printing sized strings in C. So here we will do it this way. Okay, so we have the percent sign and then $s, and this is for the D here, for the how many characters, and this is the actual thing that is used here. So this is the number of characters. So I think we don't use the total size, we use the nmem. So let's see what happens. If we do this, then this should just print out all the data that comes out from the ChatGPT API. So let's try and compile this. gcc o curl test.c. And this will not work because we have to do L curl, and we got an error here because this needs to be an integer, but it comes as a size t. So we have to cast it into an integer star. Sorry, an integer. Maybe something like this. So let's try this again, and we are able to compile it. So let's run curl test, and look at this. We actually got the response back, which is that you didn't provide an API key. So let's provide an API key. To do that, we have to add some headers. So in the ChatGPT API, we have to set these headers. So the content type and then the authorization header. So let's do that. We have to do it this way. We have to say struct curl list something. curl s list. Why do I not get curl s list like this? Struct curl s list, and this will equal to null. I believe it was this way. And of course we have to give it a name, headers. And then we have to say headers equals curl s list append, and we are going to pass in the headers, and we have to pass in the actual header string. So content type application /JSON, and we also have to pass in the authorization, which will be bearer and then the API key. Now, I'm not sure how easy it is to get like environment variables in C. I might ask ChatGPT. So how do I get an environment variable in C? There is getEn. Okay, stdlib. Okay, so that's easy. So I will actually get it from the environment because I have it in my environment as OpenAI API key. So I can set char star API key equals getEnv, and I'll get the OpenAI API key, and I have to say if API key is null, then we got an error and we should do something. Now I'll just do, well, I guess I can do printf and do something like notice no OpenAI API key provided. Now I don't really want to like kill the program from this, and I don't think fprintf will kill it, so I'll just print it, and then I guess API key could be an empty string. Can I just do this? Wait a minute. So that would be a pointer to something. Do I need to do char star API key is empty? Can I even override it this way? I'm not quite sure. But I just want to pass in an empty API key, and I will actually get an error from the API to do that. So I will just pass it as a notice. And what is this error? Okay, this is not the correct way of doing this. I'm pretty sure it was this way, but apparently it is not. Or did I just have to say like this? I don't really understand this syntax, but I remember that there had to be struct curl s list, headers and something. So this will return struct curl s list pointer. So this has to be a pointer, then we can send it to null. Okay, That makes sense. And now we got rid of all the errors. Okay. Now we can't just willy-nilly concatenate strings in C. So this has to be authorization header, and we have to set char star authorization header to be this. And then we have to do strcat. So we are going to concatenate into authorization header the API key. Now, I'm not quite sure how this works. So can I just concatenate to this, or do I need to initialize it with a maximum length? Because otherwise, where is it going to write the API key in memory? Because if I just do it this way, I'm guessing it will only allocate this much memory. So that if I append to it, it will go over something else. Maybe. So I guess I should do it. I will just set what is a good length, maybe 128. So we will initialize a string that will be this string, but we give it some extra space inside the array, and then we concatenate into that authorization header the API key. Now I'm not sure if you can concatenate null. What happens if you concatenate null? So could I just do this? Because this will return, oh, it's an int. I could do char star getIn, but let's not do that. Let's just do it like this and see what happens. So now we should actually send the headers as well. But then there was something called curl slist free all. So we have to free the headers. Let them be free. So now if we compile this again, we get a bunch of errors because we have to have string.h include string.h because we are concatenating stuff. And we still get a problem because we have to have include stdlib.h so that we can use getEnd. And now we compile it. So if we now run curl test, then we got an invalid request error that we didn't provide an API key because we didn't actually pass them into ChatGPT or the curl. So we have to also do, perhaps I will move all of this up here, and then I will add in here curl easy set opt and curl opt HTTP header. And here we will pass in the headers. And now if I compile it and I run it, then we got the same error. So what did I do wrong? I don't think that the order of this matters. Maybe it does. So let's put the headers first and let's compile it and run it. It of course does not matter. So what are we missing? I guess I could like print f the authorization header so that we actually see that it is correct. It is in fact correct, so there should be no problems. It is not correct. I am missing an I. So let's compile this again and run it. And we could not parse the JSON body of your request. So I probably wrote something wrong. So we have a model, GPT 3.5 Turbo, and messages, which have a row, user, and content, hello. So let's compile it one more time and run it. And look at this. We got a response from ChatGPT. Hi, how can I assist you today? Now, like I said, this write callback might be called multiple times. So if we change this to something like write a poem about a cat, and we compile it and we run it, then what will happen is because the response is very long, we will actually only get the last part of the response. Although this time we got the whole thing. Sorry, of course we get the whole thing because I print out the whole thing. What I was going to do is I was going to print here like JSON chunk is this and a couple of new lines. So now if we do the same thing, then you will see that it is in parts. So here, this is one chunk, and then here we have another chunk. So we can't really use this to parse the JSON. So we have to do this. We have to use the user P void pointer. So instead of doing printf, we are going to do sprintf, which will take a variable into which it will print this text. So let's call this a JSON chunk, and let's set it here. Now, I'm not sure if I'm adding like an extra step here. It might be easier to do it some different way, but I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I will define here char JSON chunk, and I will set here the JSON max len, and I will set this to 0 again, and then I am going to print the JSON chunk into this JSON chunk variable. And after that, I am going to do strcat, and I will concatenate into the user P, which I have to cast into a char star user P. I will write in there the JSON chunk, or concatenate it. So now, since we pass along this user P every time, then we can concatenate all the JSON chunks into the user P. So in the end, we are going to have the full JSON response in the user P. Now, I believe that sprintf will add a null character in the end, so we can actually just do this, and we don't have to like specify the length here anymore, hopefully. So then what we can do is, before we call curl easy perform, we can say char response, and we can, I guess we need to set it to 0 again. I'm not sure if I have to do that, but then we can say max response max len, which I guess could be the same as the JSON max len. It is JSON actually. So let's do this. We will initialize this variable, and in fact I have to initialize it up here. So let's do it here, and then we have to pass in curl opt write data, and we pass in here our response. So this will be the user P that is passed here. So it will be this. So we are now going to write into the response buffer all of the JSON chunks. So hopefully in the end, we are going to have the response here. So if we printf the response, and let's put a new line in here too, then hopefully this will be the whole JSON response. So let's try and compile this thing, and it compiled, and let's run it. And look at this, we have our whole JSON response here. It is not chunked anymore, it is the whole thing. So now we have to parse the JSON. So how do we do that? Well, we can use cJSON. So I'm going to download cJSON. Let's do git clone https github.com/ I don't remember who made cJSON, so I have to Google cJSON. Dave Gamble. So Dave Gamble / cJSON. Is it this way? It is this way. And again, I am going to say depth is 1. So we are going to clone the cJSON repository. And then what we can do is we can include cJSON / cJSON.h. And then we can use that. So how does that work? Well, let's do it down here. We have to initialize it somehow, if I remember. It will be a cJSON struct, and let's call it root, and it will equal cJSON parse, and we'll pass in here the response. And if root is null, then we get an error. So let's do f std error unable to parse JSON, return 1. And I'm doing something wrong. This needs to be a star, and if it is not null, then we can read from the cJSON an element. So what are we going to read? Well, we have here an object which has a choices, which is an array. So first, let's read that choices. So let's say cJSON. Now, I'm going to do this in a very long-winded fashion, because I don't know if there's a way to do it simpler. Let me know in the comments if you do know. But we are first going to get the choices. And again, this is going to be a pointer, I guess. And this is going to be cJSON get object item. So from the root, we are going to get choices. And if choices is null, then again we get an error. So let's say that we got an error, unable to get choices. Now there's in fact something here that we can pass in, that is cJSON error pointer. So we can actually do this up here too. So it will tell us some more information of why it went wrong. And I guess we should also check if choices, if it is not cJSON is array, because the choices element should be an array. So if choices is not an array, then we also get an error. So let's print std pair error choices is not an array, which is a great error message, and return 1. And then we have to get from the choices array the first element, if I can scroll this nicely, which will be this thing. So let's call that the choice. So let's copy all of this, and let's say that the choice is from choices the index 0, and we have to say get array item. So we get the first choice from the choices. And again, if choice is null, then we could not get the choice. If it is not an object, because the choice is an object. If again I can scroll this properly, maybe I should show it here. So where's the response? Here. So the first choice is an object, so we have to check that it is an object. So if it is not object choice, then choice is not an object, and that is an error. Now, of course, we don't want to like crash the program when this happens, but we have to handle it somehow. So let's just put the errors here for now. And when we get the choice, then we have to get the message from the choice. So let's do this again. And now we are going to have the message, which we will get from the choice. That is the key message. And again, this is get object item. And if the message is null, then unable to get message. And if it is not an object, the message, then message is not an object. And then when we get the message object, we can get the content of the message. So we are going to get from the message the content. And if the content is null, then unable to get content. And the content should be a string. So if it is not a string, the content that is, then the content is not a string. But if it is a string, then we can printf the string, which will be content string value string, like this. So now, if we run this, we are in fact going to get an error when we compile because we don't have cJSON. So we have to add it here, cJSON.c, but actually it should be from cJSON/cJSON.c. And now we were able to compile it. So now we should be able to run it. And what we should get back is only the message. But actually I'm going to, well, fine, let's run this like this. So we should get a poem about a cat and nothing else. And look at this. Here we have a poem about a cat. And actually we printed out the JSON as well. But yeah, now we can parse the JSON. So let's integrate this into our ChatGPT Clone. So let's separate these out. So we are going to have the curl part. So I will copy this up until here. And let's in fact make the function here. So this will be, I guess, char star get, let's call it ChatGPT get response. And we'll pass in a char star response buffer. I guess we can just call it response. And we'll do all of this stuff in here. So we will initialize curl, and we are going to get the OpenAI API key. We are going to add the headers, and we are going to send the payload. Now the payload we should create in this fashion. We should say sprintf, and we are going to, sorry, just, wait a moment, wait a minute. We have to just initialize this, and then sprintf into JSON payload this format, and we have to pass in the message. We used message already, so this is the, let's call it user message, and we will pass it into here. So now we will generate the JSON payload based on this user message variable, which we can pass in here. So let's do char star user message. So now we can pass in the response buffer, and we can pass in the user message. I will call it response because that is what it is. So then when we send the message, after we get it, we are going to, in fact, write directly into the response buffer. So let's call this response buffer, and we are going to move this outside of this function, and we will return the response buffer. Now, I'm not sure if we need to, why do we need to return it? I'm not sure, but it seems to make sense somehow. Maybe it should just be void. Anyway, I mean, well, yeah, we have to return something because there might be an error, and we can't return 1. We have to return null. So let's return null in case there was an error. So now we have to move this response buffer here, and then we have to call ChatGPT get response, and we are going to pass in the response, and let's say hello. And I guess we should say that if not ChatGPT get response, then fprintf error, there was an error in the ChatGPT request, something like this, and return 1. And again, we can printf the response. And then let's move this parsing into its own function as well. So this will be, again, char star ChatGPT parse JSON. And let's pass in char star content buffer. And we will pass in char star JSON, just JSON. And we are then going to pass the JSON into here to JSON parse. We're going to parse the JSON, and we are then going to return, actually we are going to, well, we are going to return the content buffer. But before that, we are going to sprintf, or we're going to strcpy into content buffer the content value string. So then we are going to have the value string in the content buffer. And again, we cannot return 1 from here. We have to return null. So return null and null and null and null and null a couple more times. And that should now work. So now we can call here char content message max len. Do we have this? We don't have this. Wait a minute. Yeah, we don't have this. So we should have a message max len, which we actually have in the main. Let's define it here for now. Message max len is going to be 2048, whatever. And we are then going to do ChatGPT parse JSON. And we are going to pass in the response, the content and the response. And again, we should check if not, or if this is null actually, if it is null. If ChatGPT parse JSON is null, then we have an error. And we will say there was an error in the parsing the ChatGPT JSON. And then of course we just printf the content. So this should work just the same as before, and let's see if it does. So I'm going to compile it, and we have an error. fprintf without the actual std error. fprintf. So these should have actually the std error, so that we will write to the std error, and it's compiled. So then we can run the curl test again, and it should work just the same as before, and it does. So we got the JSON response, and then we got the actual response, just the text of the message. So now we can move these into our main function. So let's copy all this stuff and let's move it here. And we also have to move our JSON max len in here. And we have to move cJSON and curl and stdlib maybe. I think those will come from Raylib or something, so maybe we don't need that. So let's do that. And then we will also have to add to our build.sh these things. So cJSON needs to be added here, and we have to link curl into the, and then what we need to do is we need to actually respond with the ChatGPT response. So let's remove these printfs from here and let's copy these in here. So when we send a message, which happens down here, we are going to then send that message to ChatGPT and get the response back. So after we add the message, we should pass in the user message buffer in here instead of hello. But we are deleting the user message buffer already in the message list add, so we should move that outside of it. And perhaps this could be called ChatGPT response, and this could be ChatGPT response content, something like this. And we could define these up there, so over here. And maybe this needs to be 0 initialized as well, perhaps. And we have to move from message list add this emptying out of the message down here after we have sent the message to ChatGPT. So this will be the user message buffer so that it will actually empty it out from the text input. And then we have to actually print the ChatGPT response in the message list. So we are going to do message list add again, but we are going to add the ChatGPT response content into it. So let's try and compile this and see what happens. So we have to do again build.sh and main, and everything compiled, and we had, believe it or not, 0 errors. So if it compiles, it segfaults. So let's say hello, and we get an answer back. So it worked first try. Now there's a problem here that it will hang until we get the response from ChatGPT. So if I say something like write a poem about a cat, it will stop here even though I pressed enter already, and it will wait until we get the response from ChatGPT. So this is not a very good thing. And in fact, we did not pass the right message in there because we only get hello, how can I assist you today? So something is wrong. So what are we doing here? We are sending the user message buffer to this ChatGPT get response function, and we have the response buffer. So we are appending to the response buffer in write callback, right? But we are not zeroing out the response buffer ever. And we are using strcat. So we should zero it out here. So let's see, should we do it inside the function or outside the function? I guess we can remove it after we have used it already. So here where we zero out the user message buffer, we also zero out the ChatGPT response. So now we should be able to send a different message. So let's see, in fact, if that will work. So if I say hello, I'm going to get hello. And if I say, what is 1 plus 1? I will get 1 plus 1 equals 2. So we are getting responses back. So how do we solve the issue that it is hanging? Now, really, we should do like some multi-threading, I guess. So the request would be handled in a different thread. But at least we can do this. We can make it so that our message appears first and the chat message input like zeroes out, but then we wait for, then we hang until we get the response. So at least it's a little bit better. So let's do this. Let's define here a ChatGPT message. And let's say that after we send a message to ChatGPT, we are going to strcpy, so we'll copy into the ChatGPT message the user message. And then we can move this handling into another place. And actually we want to remove the user message after that. So this stuff will be moved before this handling. So that means we are going to already draw up here the user message, but we are not going to send the ChatGPT request yet. So here we can say then, if the ChatGPT message is not a null character, so if the first character is not null character, that means we have something in there. So then we are going to handle it. And we are going to pass in the ChatGPT message, not the user message buffer. And that should, in fact, work. So if we do that and we compile and run, we did not get any errors. And if I now say hello, then it will appear. It will not appear. Actually, now we are getting multiple response requests because we have to zero out this ChatGPT message as well. So why did it still hang? So we press enter and we add a message to the message list and we copy the user message into the ChatGPT message, and then we zero out the user message, and then we draw the message list. So we should have our message in there already. This should happen after everything, because only after we call end drawing, we are going to draw. So we need to move all these down here. Now, perhaps we should actually call the end drawing up here. So this is all the drawing stuff here. And this just happens after that, because we don't have to draw anything here. Maybe that makes sense. So let's run it. And if I now say hello, it will be added there right away, and then we get the response. So that works pretty nicely. So if I say, write a poem about a cat, and I hit enter, it will go there directly, and then we just have to wait. And now we can't do anything while it's doing that, so that's still a problem. But we will get the response, and then it will write the text that way that we wrote. Now, there is still some problems with rendering the response. So the spacing of the lines is not really correct. Now, I'm not sure if the spacing is exactly that. So here we pass in the spacing of 0. So I'm not quite sure what that is. So if we set this to 5 and we try this again, if we say hello, yeah, it's this kind of spacing. So that's not what we want. But we actually will have another issue here. So if I say, tell me a joke, for example, and it will tell me a joke. And here it's proper because it actually adds 2 line breaks between these. So there should be an extra line break between each of these. But if we do this, then we are not actually wrapping the text. So we have to implement word wrapping. So I'm not going to bother at this point with the new lines, because I will handle that at the same time as the word wrapping. So I'll actually move the text down in my own way for every line. So I'm not going to care about the spacing right now. But at least we can talk to ChatGPT now and we can get responses back. So if I say, write hello world in C, then we get hello world in C. But I am kind of disappointed that it looks like that. So let me actually ask ChatGPT, how do I change the line height of Raylib text? Okay, so it says that as of my last knowledge update in September 2021, Raylib did not have a built-in feature to directly control the line height of text draw. So here we are splitting the text. So I am going to do that in the next video. So if you want to see that, then make sure to subscribe to my channel. And let me know in the comments, what do you think of these C videos and my C coding skills? I have very little experience with C, so I might be doing a lot of things wrong. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.